This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers have lost 2 straight games against the Milwaukee Bucks and Toronto Raptors in similar fashion. And joining me today to discuss it is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm dragging ass, buddy. Your boy went out for New Year's last night with the wife. He got a hotel room and everything. First night away since the little one's been around. So got after a little bit, not too much, but I could have used an early water. I could have used an early bedtime tonight.
I'm disgusted.
But here we are. I'm here though. I'm playing hurt. But like the greats, I feel like the best case scenario is you don't even notice it once we get rolling.
I mean, you sound great still, so that's a plus. Usually when I'm out and about, my voice tends to suffer for a few days. So
I didn't go to like a rager. I went to a nice dinner that just extended into the latter stages. And yes, you are an animal.
I'm
Happy
a very
New Year,
loud
buddy.
person. I'm a very loud person. Happy New Year, Carter. Happy New Year to our listeners. Unfortunately, we did not start the new year on the right foot as the Cavs lost to the Toronto Raptors. Always a tough one for me personally. I believe the Cavs are now 1-10 in their last 11 games in Toronto, which sounds right. Often, we have been shorthanded in a lot of these matchups or in weird scheduling situations. So I'm going to break out excuses right off the bat because my pride won't let me not.
I think God just hates you.
I can't rule that out. I really cannot rule that out. But it is interesting. So I look at these 2 losses that the Cavs have had. Donovan Mitchell has returned for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously a big plus. I think he has been terrific in both of these games. I've really liked his overall game. But you look at the 2 losses, and in both of them, the Cavs struggled from behind the 3-point line, generated good offensive looks, I think. A lot of nice open looks from 3 that just didn't go down. And the other thing has been they haven't got to the free throw line at the same rate as their opponents. Toronto had 14 more attempts than them, and Milwaukee, I believe, was 19. Yeah,
they're minus 33 in free throw attempt differential the last 2 games.
Not a lot of fun, and
that's a big number.
18 of 79 from 3 the last 2 games. So, as we are often a process over results podcast, I think we will live with a lot of the process, especially with the 3-point looks that they've generated. But, this was a tough loss because this was a game that, even though the Cavs were a underdog from a betting standpoint coming into this game, it was a game that the Cavs could have won. And they gave themselves opportunities down the stretch. They got consecutive stops when they needed to and just weren't able to convert some of those looks. Donovan Mitchell post-game did mention that, some of that's on him, both from, a decision-making and shot-making standpoint. But, it's just tough because the Cavs have done such a good job over this stretch, navigating the injuries, overcoming, showing a lot of toughness. I thought they showed toughness coming back from down 19 and not letting some of the calls and bad breaks get to them in this one, but they just ultimately weren't able to come away with a win.
Yeah, I do think it's probably for the best that we differentiate a little bit between the Milwaukee game and this one, just insofar as I thought they played an A+ game in Milwaukee. I really do.
Agreed.
They just didn't finish plays. They just didn't hit their shots, and that's tough. No one likes to see that, but I thought they played a great game pretty much start to finish. In Milwaukee is obscenely talented, and they got some breaks down the stretch, and they were able to win. This one I think was a bit more of an up and down performance, to be sure. A little slop. It kind of felt like at various times, just certain things Toronto was doing, the Cavs just didn't have the personnel to match. I mean, that first quarter, the second unit just got run off the floor. That wasn't shot making. That wasn't bad breaks. That was oh, we don't have the personnel, and you are attacking us in all the right ways, and it's tough.
It's interesting too, because you look at that, like this matchup in general, I think is tough because Toronto is a team that has a lot of length and they put a lot of pressure on you at the rim. And obviously without Evan Mobley, you're not going to be playing with one of those elite rim protectors at all times. So that that first quarter stretch where the second unit really kind of gave Toronto their lead and was ultimately the hole that was toughest to overcome for the Cavs in this game. That I really felt like the point of attack defense was kind of letting them down, because Tristan isn't going to be the type of guy that cleans everything up. I didn't think it was a particularly good shift from Craig Porter Jr. from that standpoint. I thought he was being a little too active, but not in the best position. Like he let his guy get by him a couple of times. I think Gary Trent Jr. blew by him and then got him on a pump fake to get to the free throw line. Niang really struggled in those minutes, and that's one of those spots.
Thank goodness he had such a nice run in the fourth, because I think we might even be opening the game talking about how rough those Niang minutes were to start the game.
Right, and when you don't have strong point of attack defense against a team with this kind of length that can get to the rim at will, pretty much, that's really going to make things tough. And with the trade that Toronto made, like, I know OG Anunoby's a very good player, but I truly feel like Toronto became a better team as a result of the deal, because they have two guys that are now actually capable of putting the ball on the floor. I think Quickly is the most dynamic guard they've had in a very long time. Fred VanVleet, some of it was he didn't have a pick and roll partner, but he would just kind of float outside the 3-point line a lot of those games. And Quickly is someone that runs a good pick and roll with Pirtle. Right off the bat, they had chemistry. He has that floater game. He still gives them length. RJ Barrett, even though his playmaking isn't strong, he is one of the few wings that will post up a mismatch at any time and can get to the free throw line. So I think they bring a lot of what Toronto needed and makes their entire roster make more sense. Like Siakam makes more sense now that he has actual playmakers to play off of.
Yeah, and he was awesome, and I agree. It was a great trade for Toronto. I think Toronto got a lot better. Maybe New York got better too. I'm not sure. Yep. I'm less sure on that front, but I mean, they looked very, very good today and beating the best team in the West in Minnesota. So, you got to give them their flowers there. They certainly got harder for the Cavs to beat, because OG is a nightmare for matchup for Donnie historically. Yep. Going back, I do want to go back to the Niang thing, because I was thinking, like, why? Obviously, Embiid is a defensive player of the year level defender. He isn't just a monstrous figure in the paint, and cleans up a lot of gunk. But why does it feel so much more challenging with Niang? And I think a big part of it, especially with their lineups the Cavs are playing right now, is that the Sixers always had like another really big wing in Tobias Harris out there. That was playing a lot of those minutes alongside Niang, and we also have the problem of we're not often playing a big wing that can go guard a guy like Siakam. So guess who's got to do it? It's got to be Jarrett. So guess who's guarding Jakob Poeltl and acting as your primary rim protector? Georges Niang. This team really stresses a little bit of the lack of lineup versatility the Cavs have. They're so small on the perimeter still. And, for all the calls for more Merrill minutes, for more CPJ minutes, guess what? You're going to be even smaller. So I feel like it's a really hard context for a guy like Niang to succeed in defensively. And then obviously the offense is just come and gone. He only got up 1 3-point attempt tonight. And some odd drives that just kind of didn't work. He threw up some floaters that did work later in the game, which was awesome. But yeah, I was just thinking about, like, I just feel like this Raptors team is kind of tailor-made to expose that, like, they just aren't well built to protect a guy like Niang right now, being as thin as they are.
And when Niang was added to this team, we acknowledged right off the bat that there's going to be matchups where it's going to be harder to play him against, and I think Toronto is one of those. It's just unfortunate that, you're down Mobley, so your 4-spot rotation becomes a little more difficult. I think this is one.
And Wade had a bad game.
Yeah, Wade had a bad game, and honestly, you look at the 3-point volume for Niang, Strus, and Wade. I think to some extent it's reflective of the ball movement or lack thereof from the Cavs tonight. I thought in the second half, even though the Cavs had their run where they were hitting some threes, it was pretty stagnant. I didn't feel like they were getting a lot of good offense. And after what Max Strus did to Toronto in the last matchup, where he just absolutely exploded in that third quarter, it really seemed like it was a point of emphasis for them to shadow him off ball, to stay in his jersey, to not allow him to kind of get free. And that, of course, also takes away the secondary playmaking from Strus, because he's not catching the ball with advantage or attacking closeouts or things of that nature. So I think when you see the lack of 3-point volume from those guys, you got to give Toronto some credit for their off-ball defense and the length that they have. But it also makes the lack of shooting, or the poor shooting, I should say, the 12 of 36 on the looks that you did get, so much more painful, because, you know, a lot of those were open, clean looks that the Cavs just weren't able to convert on.
Yeah, man. It's just it was a weird game. And I think you're spot on. The Strus stuff, I really think he's been missing Mobley recently. I think he's like something like 20% over his last 5 games from 3. It's just not. He's not hitting. And
4 or 5 tonight, and he had that tough one waved off, where I think that was the first time I've ever seen in transition where they said that he had stepped out of bounds. I would have loved to see a replay.
I don't think he was out of bounds. We didn't have a clean angle, but it looked pretty clean to me.
I mean, I got the Toronto broadcast, so I was never shown a replay of that. I was so mad at the factual errors. Like, they said that the Cavs had blown a 15-point fourth quarter lead against Milwaukee, which obviously the Cavs won the fourth quarter against Milwaukee, so that's not exactly possible. And then they also said the 4-2 stretch that they had prior to that was Donovan Mitchell carrying the team, which of course he did not play for the majority of those games.
Yeah.
So I was frustrated throughout the night. For
I can't believe you don't watch on mute, buddy. This is so built to trigger you.
I know,
but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's one of those things where it's really hard to, part of you does want to just say, hey, they're not getting to the line and they're not hitting their threes, and that's a pretty deadly combo. They got to the line quite a bit tonight. They just didn't get to the line 40 times, though. There was some intentional fouling there at the end that pads those numbers if we're going to be fair. So I don't know. I would say of the losses, I would say the Milwaukee one was certainly the more encouraging one. But like, I do think there's just a little bit of the fact that it's just hard to lose any games that you think you should probably win right now. I know, again, they were dogs, but like the Raptors were 12-20.
Yeah, and the reality of this stretch is the Cavs have to play very hard, and they have to play very consistently with, shorthanded personnel in order to have a chance to win. Like that Dallas game, as much as we talk about, poor shooting luck in some of these games, they shot the lights out against Dallas. Like, they were phenomenal. They had positive shooting luck in that game. Luka Doncic, was limping around in the second half and just wasn't as effective. He missed the next game or two after that, I believe. So, like, there was a lot of things that went their way in a season that hasn't gone their way. But you just can't have a stretch like you had tonight where, the second unit was just so bad that it really put them in a hole that was tough to overcome, because the starters, by and large, were really good, but you just had uneven play, whether it's, Niang having a tough first shift and then playing better in the third quarter. Isaac Okoro had a really quiet first half, and this is another one of those kind of tough matchups for Okoro on the other end of the floor, where it's tough for him to get going offensively. But he was a big part of the Cavs' comeback, where his point of attack defense was on point.
He was really good on Barrett and quickly.
Yeah, and Barrett had 5 turnovers in this game. I think almost all of those were live ball turnovers that led to transition points. Okoro was fantastic finishing in transition there. Obviously, Sam Merrill was great in the fourth quarter and had a nice stretch for them. Like, I do actually want to talk about Sam Merrill, because this has been a bit of a talking point post-game, at least in our Discord and whatnot. So Merrill plays the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter. Cavs go up 3 in that time. The 5-point possession happened immediately after he checked out. But so
devastating. I felt like
yeah.
that was the play of the game, by the way.
Yeah, Jared Allen checks in for Sam Merrill at the 6-minute mark because Scotty Barnes was checking in for Toronto. So Toronto was going to their, full-size lineup after Merrill had played. Would you have gone back to Merrill later in the game?
First off, I think Allen came for Tristan.
No, I looked at the play-by-play. It says Allen came in for Merrill.
Tristan
at that point.
subbed out at the same time. I'm sure of that because Tristan and Jarrett
I'm blaming
never
ESPN then.
Yeah,
ESPN
Tristan and Jarrett never played together, except for like a few box out possessions. But either way, I think this is a spot where you just kind of have to, I think sometimes you ride your hot lineup to the end of the game, and sometimes you need to pivot away. And I think JB was right to pivot away in this instance. Yeah. The reality, and he was already starting to pivot away where he took Niang out, I think a possession or two prior to that, or a stoppage or two prior to that. And I think it was the right choice because we saw RJ get into Merrill's chest and finish over him. We saw Scotty get into Merrill's chest and finish over him. And you just can't switch and help, you can't get mismatched in semi-transition when Toronto's playing this big. And I get it. I don't think they lost the game because Sam Merrill wasn't in down the stretch. They generated clean looks for good shooters, and those good shooters did not make those clean looks. Obviously, LeVert also had a little bit of a heroics on top of that, which kept them as close as they were. But yeah, I don't know. That didn't feel like a thing. And yeah, Isaac did take a pretty quick trigger 3 in the corner, but goes in, again, 37, 38% 3-point shooter, has hit clutch ones in his career. It came off his hand terribly. I knew it was missed right away. Yeah. And it missed bad.
The first one came off his hand terribly. The second one I actually thought was going to go in. And the first one, I think he was a little too open and almost put the ball on the floor and then brought it back up. But we would be hypocrites if we said, hey, you can't take those shots, because those are the shots that Okoro needs to take. I like seeing him take those shots. And to your point, Okoro was a big part of the comeback initially to begin with. He had played great in his last shift. And it's just really tough when it's quickly RJ, Scotty, Siakam, and Pirtle. You can't switch at all if it's Donovan and Merrill out there. And RJ is going to post up Merrill every time. You can't put Merrill on quickly because then Donovan with 4 fouls is on RJ. So it's just not a position where you can't do anything defensively there. I think it was the right call to put Okoro back in that game. And to your point, they had open looks.
I would say it's a defensible call. I think this one's kind of Coke or Pepsi. I don't think there is a right call because I do think Merrill was playing so freaking well. And by the way, talk about taking the challenge. He was going chest to chest with quickly quite a bit. In the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter.
With how he competed defensively. I really liked the minutes from Sam Merrill, and I thought it was the correct call to go to him again over Craig Porter Jr. because Craig just didn't have a great shift, and Merrill was giving them what they needed on a night where you couldn't hit threes. He was actually going out there and hitting some shots. Yeah,
absolutely. I thought his ISO defense on the guards was really, really good, whether it was Schroeder or Quickly. It was just, they were so big. They're so big, and it's okay, if Darius Garland's out there, you're going to deal with that and you're going to help in different ways and you're going to shade and cause it's Darius Garland, but man, I get kind of going hey, if it's between Merrill and Okoro and we need to get 2 or 3 stops to close this game, we're up 3, why not? I get it.
Did you see the Dan Favali tweet about Merrill?
Yeah, I did.
I think it's one of my favorites. I got to read it out. Sam Merrill has the shooting form of someone who holds Papa Shot records at a dozen Dave & Buster's locations across the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, he was
so true.
Yeah, it's very true, and he's just. And I'm really, really glad he had this game, by the way, because
me too.
He goes on this, when you're a guy like Sam Merrill, your career can be defined by 2 or 3 game stretches. There were times, to call on a former Cavalier, Dylan Windler. There were 2-3 game stretches where he would get the opportunity, and it didn't happen. He was getting clean looks, and they just weren't going in, or he wasn't taking them. And then he gets hurt again, and it doesn't work out. So like Merrill goes on that 2-game stretch where he scores 46 points against Houston and Utah, and you're like, okay, you got your chance, you're making the most of it, and now like maybe you're going to be a guy who just plays for the rest of the year. Then he hurts his wrist, and you go, oh no. He guts through like 12 minutes against New Orleans, then doesn't shoot particularly well against Milwaukee, and you're like, oh man, did he just get extraordinarily unlucky right as he was starting to break out? So the fact that he comes out in this one after a few days off, scores 16 points in 17 minutes, spaces the floor well, rebounds well, challenged Scotty Barnes at the rim on one possession, which I was really proud of, because he would have been well justified to make a business decision there, but ends up forcing a miss by going straight up guarding the rim. A really cool game for him, and again, I can't help but feel like he kind of needs to be getting run, throughout the rest of the year if he's going to play like this. Because he does provide something a little different, even if that means no backup point guard minutes.
Yeah, I was about to say, so you would lean towards him if you're healthy over Craig Porter Jr.?
Yeah, and if they're fully healthy, I might lean towards him over either Dean or George, depending on the matchup.
I can see that, because the tricky thing for the Cavs and from a rotation standpoint with JB is it's very tough, because right now you want to have Mitchell out there for primary ball handling, and then when you go to the second unit, you want to stagger a bit and have Caris out there. And Caris, had a phenomenal game, I thought, overall tonight. It's very tough to also stagger Caris and Craig. And like Craig needs to have the ball in his hands, and Caris is comfortable with the ball in his hands. So you really start to get into a tough situation with those secondary minutes where, if Craig is playing off ball, he's not going to have a lot of gravity. And in matchups like this, where there's a lot of length, he's just not able to help in the same ways offensively. So I get the case for that, because if Caris is your secondary ball handler or your second unit ball handler, it does get tougher to play Craig Porter Jr. in those minutes. As much as I like him as a stabilizing presence, and I thought he was obviously great down the stretch in Milwaukee, which showed that, hey, he can bounce back from not making the most of his first half minutes. But, it's just one of those things where the Cavs just, even though they have talented players, even in this injured state, the fit and the lineup versatility, as you said, it can be tricky at times.
Yeah, well, they're just real small on the perimeter, and then they, they only have one big, that, 1.5 bigs, depending on how, Tristan is running on a given night. And it just makes things weird for them. They definitely are kind of in search of, some of that flexibility. And like, I feel like right now, one of the downsides of how beat up they are is every lineup has like one scab to pick at for the opponent, which like, of course you're missing 2 or your 3 best players, and two players that do very, very special and unique things for you. So of course you're gonna have a lot less versatility, and you're gonna have to make more difficult choices in the lineups you're running, which I think is kind of the crux of that. Should Merrill have stayed in? And the other reason I think I'm okay with sitting Merrill is he played the first 6 minutes of the quarter. You're not gonna play him the whole quarter. Like there is a degree of which, like, I guess maybe you could have kept him in a little longer, but I think it's one of those counterfactuals that people love when they want to pick at coaches, which is to be like, well, if he had stayed in, they would have kept scoring. And it's like, well, would they have? I don't know. Would they have not been able to get stops? It's it's impossible to know. But like I thought the call was justifiable. I think this is one of those games where single game plus minus lies. U Isaac was minus 18, worst on the team in his 27 minutes. I don't think that really represented reality of how he actually played in this game, and I thought he was giving him good minutes, so I totally get him being out there.
Yeah, and you got to remember that these guys are humans. They do need rest. They don't have unlimited stamina if they're going to continue to be effective. But no, it doesn't need time off, Carter, and can just keep going. Zoom. It's always there for us. It's always providing the support. It's got unlimited stamina. Big shout out to Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. I do want to go back because I think we skipped over it just a little too quickly of how Donovan Mitchell has played in these two games. It is obviously great to see him come back from the illness and showing, not being worse for wear. I think he has taken on the primary playmaking duties really well. I had critiques about him earlier in the year in the minutes that he was playing without Darius, and I do think that he has been playing more team basketball, and I've been happy with just his overall game. I think his effort has been phenomenal. His defense has been great. Had 4 steals tonight. I believe he had 3 stocks against Milwaukee as well. So he's doing it on both ends of the court as well as contributing on the glass. The one thing I've noticed, though, with Mitchell being back is I feel like sometimes the players he's out there are a little... They tend to defer to him a little too much when they played without Donovan, because they understood that they were without Donovan and they were without Darius. They were willing to take those shots right away when they got them, and they're just a half beat slow sometimes.
I think that's a Dean Wade critique the last 2 games.
Dean especially. Dean is the first player that comes to mind when it comes to this. I believe he's even in our show notes here, but. I just feel like they need to be as assertive and they need to take those open shots when they're available and not just look to give it up to Donovan, because that was part of what made them so effective during this run. And it's a change in, playing with Donovan, but it's not his fault. It's almost a little bit like, with the Heatles when LeBron and Wade, it took them some time to figure out how to play with one another. Obviously, these guys have more of a run together, but it's just one of those things from a chemistry standpoint where they have to be confident enough in their own games to say, I'm going to remain assertive no matter who's out there. I think when the Cavs are at their best, that's how they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, outcome hunters among us that are, have an agenda will kind of say something like, oh, Donovan comes back and all of a sudden they're playing stagnant ball. And it's like, are they, or did they just miss a bunch of threes? Are they, or did Dean Wade pass up three open shots that he had on kickouts? And I think, it's clear where I stand on this, because is Donovan pounding the rock and keeping Sam Merrill from getting up 11 shots in 17 minutes? No. Sam has been told, hey, Sam, if you want to play for us on the floor, you have to shoot every time you touch the ball with a millimeter of space. So guess what? When he shared the floor with Donovan, he was getting clean looks that he was taking aggressively. So I do think Donovan's playmaking has been much improved comparatively to the first shift. Some earlier lead ball handling stretches in the year that I think we were relatively critical of. And I do think, especially against Milwaukee, I thought he was phenomenal as a scorer. Just absolutely beyond phenomenal. 14 of 23 from the field, where, of his 9 misses, 8 of them were on threes. So he went out.
It was a tough game for the
he went 12 of 13. He went 12 of 13 from 2 with 9 assists and 2 turnovers. He couldn't make a 3 to save his life. Which, welcome to the club. He had a lot of friends on that bus in that game, but super efficient in this one, a little less so. Went 8 of 21 from the field. But overall, I thought he had another really, really good game, and it's been nice to have him back. I think this is one of those things where it's like, you do have to pay closer attention if you want to, I guess if you want to be one of those causality people, you could be like, well, Donovan comes back and then they lose 2 games in a row. It's like, well, sure, I guess. But I it's not one of those things where they were playing a certain way and they completely forgot who they were when Donovan returned. I think they just haven't made shots. And I think, I think they've lost it more on the defensive side of the ball these last 2 games than the offensive side in the first place. I do want to talk about Caris. I think we needed to hit on Caris a little harder in this one, because He yet again had a monster game. He had 31 points on 20 shots. And I'm going to, a little pop quiz, Justin. How many mid-range shots did Caris LeVert take tonight?
I'm going to guess 0.
That is correct. He went in the restricted area. He went 7 of 9. In the rest of the paint, he went 3 of 4. Top of the break 3, he went 2 of 5. And corner, he went 0 of 2. I thought this was a really cool game for Caris for a couple of reasons. One, obviously the shot diet was awesome. He did exactly, he with the Raptors playing that high pressure in your chest kind of defense, like dribbling into mid-rangers is really not the move. You need to get past them because they're going to open up space behind them because they're they're pressing you so hard. And I thought his finishing was phenomenal tonight. I think Caris has been one of those guys that can be a little maddening as a scorer because he'll get this clean angle to the rim and then just put the wrong kind of English on the layup or take a bad kind of shot trajectory against a big or not dunk it when he just needs to dunk it. And he was finishing in all sorts of ways. He was floating it up over Pirtle. He was ducking in for reverses. He had that one absolutely should have been an and one on his dunk where he got hit in the back of the head. Just an awesome paint game for Caris tonight. And I thought he deserved a lot of credit because, this is one of those games where it's like, hey, just do this. This is like you are such a big 2 guard. And you're a good athlete. Like you can do this if you just, attack in straight lines and generate really clean angles for yourself. Because I thought he did a really good job. He didn't have to do a lot of circus shots in this one. It was a lot of, I got to the spot faster than you, and I'm 6'7". And that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I've liked his willingness to shoot as well. Taking 7 threes is great here. The one area where his 3-point shot has really struggled this year is with those pull-ups. He's shooting 29% on pull-up threes coming into this game for the season. Last year was 39% and 36% the previous year. So, you're hoping that gets a little bit better. But I just really liked his game overall. The Raptors broadcast was ranting and raving about how much they like Caris LeVert and what a luxury he is coming in off the bench. And when he's playing this well, it does make it harder to play Craig, right? Like I think in games where Caris is struggling, maybe that's where you go because you need a bit more of a steady hand out there. But he was playing really, really good basketball. I think his defense has been, consistently undervalued throughout his Cavs tenure. I really like how he competes on the defensive end of the floor. I just think, people had already kind of made up their mind on Caris and don't give him the same leeway as some of the other players, some of the younger guys on the Cavs get. But I do think more consistently than not, he is a helpful and effective player for Cleveland.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I just thought he deserved a lot of credit for, he kept them in this game, just like he kept them in that Dallas game. When things were rough, and I cannot believe he missed that left wing 3 where Toronto messed up the switch because that shot has been just absolute butter for him.
What did you think of his decision to go for the quick 2?
Hated it. Thank you. Actually, I meant to talk about this. The Cavs are a quick 2 team, and I would like them to not be a quick 2 team. It is such a low percentage play. Especially since they're not doing a particularly good job against a team like Toronto of forcing the ball to their bad free throw shooters. Like, you got to trap off of Pirtle and force it into his hands if you're going to play this kind of strategy down the stretch. And the reality is, the other reason why the quick 2 needs to be a dead strategy for the team is because of the honorless, pitiful, disgusting to the basketball god strategy of fouling up 3, because that's what the quick 2 does. When you're down 3 and you go for a quick 2, what you're saying is, we're going to foul you and hope you split it so we would love for you to miss both, but you're probably not going to do it. You're probably going to split it, and maybe we'll get a cleaner look at a 3 later in the game. That's really what you're looking for. But with the foul up three strategy kind of pervasively taking over the league, so many times down the stretch of games, you just don't get the chance to shoot the three. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is not new. The Cavs have done this quite a bit. And I don't think that's a decision from Caris as much as it seems to be an organizational philosophy of, we're going to try to run a set, and if not, go run towards the hoop and get a two. But, like, especially,
I thought in this instance it might have been a Caris decision only because Hurdle was guarding him at half.
Maybe, but they've done this more than once, and that's why I think it is a coaching staff type of decision. And of course, who knows? Maybe I'm just way wrong. But like the fact of the matter is,
I still think it's interesting as like a philosophical conversation.
I think it needs to be a dead philosophy. It really does, because it's just the math has tilted with the foul up three strategy that you're now asking for like 14 factors to get it to happen for that to happen. Yeah. Making matters worse, they inbounded the ball at half court. Like, you can do a quick two if Jarrett sets a screen and slips towards the hoop, and you can inbound it straight to him, and he dunks it, and you burn like a quarter of a second. They burned like 8 seconds to get that quick two with 15 seconds left.
Yeah,
you can't do that. It is a losing strategy, and I just think this is a spot where you're gonna have to adjust to the times, and I don't think it's gonna work.
Yeah, you've sold me on this. I hate the foul up three.
It's gross, and I'm so glad the Cavs don't do it, even if they should.
Oh yeah, Max Strus blocking Seth Curry instead of fouling him. That's what I want to see. I want to see honest basketball out here. It is frustrating that after you got the quick two and you're up one, that Siakam travels on the inbound.
Oh yeah, I mean it sucks to have a missed call of that importance.
And he had traveled twice on inbounds in the last 2 minutes, which is infuriating.
And it kind of seemed like Luke Walton was like sending the ref like, "Hey, I told you to look for this, dude."
Right? And like it's enough that he gets to travel and elbow his way to the rim all game. Like, let's at least enforce it there. That was a little bit frustrating, but I agree with you. I wish teams were more honest and would play it straight up.
The thing that sucks is I don't even know how you legislate that one out, because like an intentional foul, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not like a take foul where it's going to be its own thing.
I would have been mad if, you know what, I understood them calling it a clear path foul when Donovan was going for Scotty. I was going to be really mad if that was a take foul, because I think, again, it was our friend of the podcast, Ben Cox, that said this, where if you have to go to review to figure out if it's a take foul, it shouldn't be. Like, spirit of it should be only when it's very blatant and obvious. But yeah, that was very, very frustrating to watch.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, you probably should have had a chance to win the game. You didn't get it, and that sucks. But like but you have to play the percentages here. And I just think that the if you're running like a probability model, I think finding your way to attempting a three is just gonna, like, the number of outcomes that lead to a made three, down three with 14 seconds left, I'm sure your win probability is like less than 10% anyway. Yeah. But like, I just think you get closer if you find a way to jack up a three, even if it's a tough off the dribble three for Donovan or Caris. I think you have to find a way to get that attempt. And then what, all sorts of craziness can happen from there. You can get long offensive rebounds that get kicked out for more open threes. How often do we see that, Justin?
Yeah.
Like
the Coro game winner against Brooklyn, right?
Like the quick two opens up nothing. It just makes it so you have a chance to foul probably their best free throw shooter, because they're probably going to be able to inbound it to their best free throw shooter, and hope they somehow miss both. Like, it's just like the outcomes are too limited, and I think that's something. If I'm on the Cavs coaching staff, it's something I'm taking a hard look at.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, and also just having the 14 seconds to get your best possible look, because when it's down to that 7 seconds, you can run into the type of situation that the Cavs were on the opposite end of against Dallas, where all right, you draw your play for the inbound, you get the trap, a well-timed trap or something that blows it up. There's just not any opportunities to go to your counters, right? Like it's similar to how we wanted the Cavs to go earlier in the shot clock of running their offense, and that's been one of my favorite changes of the Cavs offense this year is they do go earlier in the shot clock, and you are able to get to second and third sets and other looks depending on what the defense is doing. So I completely agree with that. I think we should also mention that Jared Allen was phenomenal again. I really liked his minutes in this game. Obviously, a career best night for him against the Bucks with 30 points, and I've just been so impressed with how assertive he's been. And he's another one of those guys, like when we talk about, Wade not looking to defer when he gets the ball with advantage and everyone else on the perimeter. I feel the exact same way with Jared Allen. Like when Mobley comes back, whether it's in, the 32 minutes where we're playing with just one big on the court and he's the primary center, or whether it's when they're together, he has the same ability to attack when he has an advantage. When the opposing center is looking off him because they're expecting him to pass and set somebody else up, I love his attacks and his finish and the touch he's showing. He had that drop step on Jakob Poeltl late in the game where just completely got him out of the way and had that nice finish. Couldn't believe that he didn't get the and one, that it didn't drop late in the game as well. But I've just been so impressed with him. I've been so happy with his assertiveness, and I love to see that the conversation around Allen has completely changed amongst the fans. They're like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. This is the top 10 center. Like we do tend to have the memory of a goldfish when it comes to Cavs players sometimes. But I've just been so impressed. And it's a reminder that, hey, he just turned 25 years old. He is entering his prime as a player. Like he's still on an upward trajectory. And sometimes we forget about that with guys that are more finished product already.
If I may pick some nits about his game tonight, as compared to his game against Milwaukee, I do think there was a degree of that same tentativeness. I think tonight was a night where he probably could have gotten up 15 to 20 shots. Jakob was playing in such a deep drop. That possession you cited near the end where, he was running some DHO. Jakob was sitting under the rim, so he just drove into his chest and, pivoted into a frankly easy jump hook. I thought he had that all night. He didn't take a single mid-ranger tonight when he had those with Toronto in a drop. And I think the Cavs could have used some of those attempts. I do think there was a difference in how he attacked Milwaukee's drop compared to how he attacked Toronto's. And I think that level of, I think he should rely on that mid-range jumper a little more because I think it's pretty pure. I think the numbers back up that he makes them at a good rate. I could not believe the extent to which he was taking them against Milwaukee. Like clearly, he was a man possessed, taking them from like all parts of the floor. It was like a full 15-foot arc around the hoop. It was like his own personal line that he was just kind of operating on an axis.
When he banked that one in, I was like, all right, this is just his night.
Yep. But I thought he could have done that more. I actually think this is the kind of night where he should have finished with, 20 to 25 points, not 16. So yeah, I mean, another efficient night. He's up to 2.7 assists a game, full assist better than his career best. Yeah. So he really is taking a leap right now. But yeah, I think he left some meat on the bone tonight compared to how he's played the last couple games.
Yeah, and last season he was second on the team in terms of mid-range percentage, just behind Donovan Mitchell at 46%. This year he is up to 57%. He's in the 98th percentile when it comes to mid-range jumpers. And, if that shot is available, he needs to take it. It is the exact same thing that we say with Evan Mobley, where when the drop is there and they're giving you that kind of space, you have to keep the defense honest. You have to take those shots. And that was a bit of the conversation against Milwaukee too, where it's like, man, Cavs are 6 of 43 from three. Like they should have kept, maybe they shouldn't have taken threes. Maybe they should have gone for other looks. And I think the Cavs' ability to get to the rim was part of why they were able to stay in that game to begin with, right? Like, I don't think it's like a Boston type offense where if the three isn't falling, they're not generating looks any other way. You need to still take those open threes. Like when they're available, if you are passing up an open three, you are not going to generate a good look on offense 8 out of 10 times. Like you have to take those open shots, whether it's the mid-range shot for Allen and Mobley or if these open threes. I know it sucks to miss open looks. You're going to have probably 10 games a year that you win because you had great shot luck, and you're going to lose 10 a year because you had bad shot luck. That's just the reality of today's NBA. And I should give a shout out to our buddy Michael Keefe from Garage Beers.
I was about to bring up this conversation because that was interesting.
Because he was talking about how he didn't like the term shot luck, and I know some of our listeners feel the same way. And he says, like it really has to come down to execution of hitting those looks. And I agree with him. There's a luck component, there's an execution component, but whether you side with luck or execution, the end result from an analysis standpoint is the same thing. They got to make shots. Like there's nothing interesting that you can add to the conversation, in my opinion. It's whether or not you make shots. And from an analysis standpoint, I always just default to, are you producing or are you generating wide open looks for yourselves, or are you giving up wide open looks for the opponent? If the answer is no, and you're not giving up open looks, but the opponents are hitting everything, that's negative shot luck. It sucks. It happens, sometimes throughout a season. But like from an offensive standpoint, if you're getting open looks, you have to take those looks, whether you want to call it execution, whether you want to call it luck. It's a bit of both, but the end result is the same. You gotta make those looks.
Yeah, I think it's all wallpaper in the end for the same conversation. One thing that I do think is kind of funny is I do feel like if we started saying shot execution instead of shot luck, I think people would kind of would only want us to define the Cavs shooting by execution. Like it'll be execution if it's the Cavs, it's luck if it's the other team. Like if the other team misses a bunch of open threes, we won't be like, oh, we got lucky. We will be like, oh, we got lucky. Not that they didn't execute well, So like I just feel like it's kind of one of those sneaky ways
I try to point that out.
Of course. I just think it's all, so whether you call it luck, whether you call it execution, what we're really trying to say is we cannot control how well a shooter shoots on a given night. And there is a lot of evidence to suggest that even the best shooters run hot and run cold on given nights. And sometimes it leaves their hands really well. Sometimes it doesn't.
Jalen Brunson went 1 of 9 from 3 today. But, Steph Curry, didn't he go 0 of 9 in the finals?
Yeah, I'm sure Jalen Brunson would say I shot like, crap. But the reality is over the course of a sample, I think it's kind of an analytical way to just describe it as luck. We're not just saying like, oh well, the gods were against us on this day. Perhaps the stars will align for us better. No, we're just trying to use a statistical term to define kind of the phenomenon. So,
and this is also where me being, a Canadian and growing up watching a lot of hockey, like that's a big part of the conversation. Like the hockey advanced stats is basically, did you generate enough opportunities on nets? Because whether or not it goes in is very often coming down to luck. Like puck luck is such a common term. And it's the exact same thing when it comes to 3-point shots. Like if even for anyone that's played basketball, like you can be a good consistent shooter, and often that's reflected like in free throw percentage for the most part. But there's some days where it's like, okay, everything that's leaving my hand is dropping. Like I'm throwing up junk and it's going in. And then there's other days where it's you just can't get the right feel on the ball, and it feels good sometimes leaving your hand and it doesn't go in. Like that's just the reality of the sport.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we have been harping on 3-point volume for so many years in a row now, which is like, hey, if we're gonna kind of live and die by this thing, we'd at least like a large enough sample that reflects our shooting talent over the course of the year, that gives us that kind of variance that kind of plays in our favor. So when we have a hot shooting night, we're killing teams, not we're just doing well because we only got up 30 attempts. Regarding volume, NBA University just tweeted out Sam Merrill currently leading the NBA in 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. Would you believe that? 17.1.
Of course I would believe that.
17.1. Curry's at 16.3. Tim Hardaway Jr.'s at 14.8. So he's in first by a lot.
That shot he took in transition was psychotic.
Yeah.
Like, he hit that, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that was probably the one that inspired the Favali tweet, because oh my god, like that was such a confident look in, and I'm with you. I think as much as I'm a long-term believer of Craig Porter Jr. and I want him to see him, depending on the matchup, continue to get opportunities, and if he plays well, earn more minutes throughout those individual games. In general, I lean Merrill in terms of what this team needs. And, it's tough because we do need playmaking. Like, I look at the slump that Max Strus is in, and I think it's reflective of not playing with, an experienced point guard. We are still down our first, second, and third string point guard. And you look at the difference in shooting percentage for him in games where Garland plays and not, it is staggering. But, ultimately, I think getting shooting really matters. And I honestly think Merrill runs good offense. Like, he's not just floating around the 3-point line. He got to the basket and had some nice finishes in this one. He makes the right passes. I think he competes well defensively and is in the right position. So I think from an experience standpoint, from an execution standpoint, and just understanding what the offense needs in the stretch, I tend to lean Merrill.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I agree with you, buddy. I think if the core lineups are not going to be high 3-point shooting lineups, then you need to inject it everywhere you can find it. I've said this. This was kind of a big part of the thesis of why I liked the idea of bringing in a Strus and a Yang this offseason, was like, hey, our starting five are, we're going to be starting two dudes and playing two dudes 30 plus minutes that will likely attempt 0 3-point attempts. So if we want to be a 40 plus attempt team, then everyone else has got to be willing to shoot, Yep. And like, I think, Merrill's clearly demonstrated that in spades, leading the league and comfort level and letting that thing fly. And I want to continue to see it.
Mm-hmm. Before we wrap this up, Carter, I want to get your thoughts. What did you think of the New York Knicks trading their best two young assets in terms of players to the Toronto Raptors? It seems a little bit odd.
It's just such an interesting trade, because they didn't touch their pick stash at all. Mm-hmm. And it's an enormous. I think they have 8 tradable firsts.
Correct.
Which is a lot more than most teams. Now, a lot of those firsts are, of the variety that are like protected for 9 years, and the
protections are insane on them, yes.
and are really hard for them to convey and actually turn into firsts of any value. But with that said, I do think it's interesting. I do think it means that if they were going to try to trade for a true third star, because I think even the biggest OG Anunoby fans would tell you he's a high-end role player. He's kind of a great fifth guy in a starting lineup, or a fourth guy in a starting lineup, not a high volume superstar. If they want to find that, it does seem like they're going to have to get a lot more creative. They're probably going to have to take, because most teams trading a star are going to want an elite player, an elite young prospect, and a boatload of picks these days.
Yeah.
And if you want to buy a great player with picks only, it's probably going to be in that DeJounte Murray class. That guy that might make 1 or 2 All-Stars in their career kind of tier.
And that's
player.
been all the follow-up reporting too, right?
Yeah.
From Knicks beat writers and whatnot.
Yeah. So if they want a super duper star, it's going to have to be one of those things where they go get a young prospect with 3 or 4 of those firsts, and then get that and reroute that to whoever they're getting the star from with another 3 firsts. It gets a lot more complicated. I think the fact that Grimes has kind of stalled out is a real problem for them on that front. Like, you kind of thought Grimes could be that next young stud that, if he and Quickly had equivalent value, how nice would that be?
Yeah.
And of course, they're going to have to pay OG. So it's not like they're going to be a free agency player anytime soon. So, like, I think their road to that star has gotten a little bit more hard, even though I think ultimately their flexibility is probably a little bit better just because of the fact that OG is such a great complementary player. There was no iteration of the Knicks, even when they added a player. It's just tough, Like, the Cavs have a hard enough time trying to build a contender with 2 6'1", 6'2" guys in their best five. And those two are significantly more talented than Brunson and Quickly, I would say. So, I think it's an interesting move. I think, if you're a Cavs fan, you can read the tea leaves on kind of what that might mean.
Well, I mean, Carter, it was the worst kept secret in the league that the Knicks were getting. First, it was Karl Anthony Towns at the draft. Then it was Embiid. Then it was Giannis. Then it was Donovan. Like, it's just one of those reminders that people are going to make assumptions from the outside, and
they're going to be real confidently wrong.
Yeah, people are comfortable with that, especially, content makers like Bill Simmons and whatnot, who, still the best in the game when it comes to producing content, but are going to be loud wrong in the process many times. But, I think it's definitely interesting from that standpoint. And to me, it's a reminder to not let a lot of the noise affect how you view the league and your team and whatnot. Because, people are going to make guesses and people are going to make assumptions, but ultimately, like, all you can really do is focus on what's going on the court. I think that's why we try to do that on the podcast, because there's always going to be rumors, there's going to be noise and whatnot, but ultimately what makes this league great and why I love this sport is the 82 games, and the speculation is fun and whatnot, but nobody knows for sure what's going on out there.
Absolutely, buddy. And if I may suggest Cavs fans continue, I'll say it a billion times. Watch games as a fan, and just enjoy the process of watching the team try to figure stuff out. Like, I feel like focusing on the macro stuff is interesting, conceptually, but the second you start letting the macro stuff drive your fanhood, like, it's just kind of a road to misery, because you don't have any control over it. And obviously you don't have control over the games, but like, the games are like what you're actually spending all your time doing, watching. So like, I would always push everyone to that side, because it's just, in the end, like, it's the more fun way to experience things. Like, it's nice just to watch a Cavs Raptors game and be grumpy about the result without having to worry about like bigger implications.
Oh man, we're just under a month, or just over a month away from the trade deadline.
And we freaking love trade deadline. I'm not saying like you can't have fun with it. I'm just saying like, don't let that be the number one. I think there is a degree to which it's just easier for us in our brains as like dorky basketball fans to cosplay as a GM than it is to cosplay as a coach or a player, So like, you almost lean towards what you can relate to better, and we all fired up 2K and done the trade finder. So like, I do think there's, it's certainly fun, it's certainly interesting. It's just like, I'm trying to just have fun with that side of it and focus more on, for more of my analytical mind on the game to game process, because it's just, frankly, like, it's the more interesting thing. It's not only, we don't have control over any of it, but what happens on the floor is within the realm of control of the players that are on the floor, which is a lot more fun than any machinations.
It's what we spend 82 nights over a 6-month period doing, right? Like, I think that needs to be remembered. It's disappointing that the Cavs weren't able to steal either of these games. I think a bit of bad luck that Toronto had this trade, because I really do feel like it. Well, I'm not even just saying this. The broadcast was mentioning it, how Pirtle and all those guys were saying it breathed life into the organization. Like, that arena was the loudest it's been in a long time. I think the Raptors had been kind of stagnant, and it gave them the juice that they needed. But the Cavs now have an opportunity here. They're still a game and a half out of fourth, even with this loss. They have a 3-game homestand before they head to Paris with Washington, and San Antonio. Got to take care of business. You got to go win these games. Then after that Paris trip, you're at the 4-week window where a return from Garland becomes possible. It still may take 5 or 6 weeks, but you start to get into the possible return for Garland, and I think that's going to make things a whole lot easier. So I think the worst is behind the Cavs when it comes to the injury luck. Knock on wood. Hopefully we get healthier from this point on, but I think overall they have navigated this stretch incredibly well. We will be going live after Wednesday's game. Big thanks to everyone that stayed up and tuned in after the loss tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live on YouTube. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.